Hey, it's Rick here, and welcome back to the podcast. That was my best radio voice. Well, I've got something different for you today, and not completely by design. I had a guest scheduled for this morning to record our regular interview style podcast, but unfortunately, he had to postpone for a couple of weeks, and I made some half-assed attempts to get some other people on, and that didn't work out either. So I'm like, all right, let's just jump on and do a solo cast. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really like doing these ones because it's just me. And to be honest, I feel a bit exposed. I feel like there's no margin for error here, but that's actually not true. But what is true is that I feel more comfortable in a conversation. I think one of my strengths is being able to react to what's happening and to ask questions. And I kind of don't get to do that when it's just me talking shit. So here we are. I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm also working on leaning into that. And for my world, the work that I put out into the world to not be perfect, because it's not. So yeah, I thought I'd jump on and record a little solo one. And because this is not planned, I thought I'd just talk about what's alive for me right now. And what's really alive for me is I'm in the middle of putting together an audio program called Unstuck. And that's kind of where my head is at the moment. My energy and my thoughts are kind of in that program. And I guess on a bigger scale, the program is really just the expression of a whole collection of ideas and thoughts that have been bubbling away, I guess, for years. I don't know. I don't even know if I need to quantify it. But it's, yeah, the whole holistic coaching and now kind of moving more or heading towards being a therapist. I think the premise behind that is that you're supporting someone who wants to change. That's the general premise of when people come, they've got something that they want to change in their life. And I think the other side of that is that people who also, reach out for external support feel stuck, feel in some capacity like they can't resolve the issue themselves, and they're a bit stuck in place. And this idea of being stuck is, it's I can get lost in it because I find it really, really fascinating around the different ways that we as humans can get stuck, me included. I'm fucking good at it, actually. But yeah, it's just doing more work with more humans over the last couple of years. I have a growing curiosity around the different powers that keep us stuck in place. And so that was kind of the premise for this audio program. And yeah, it's more just an expression of like thinking about the work that I'm doing and then putting some sort of version of that out into the world. As you can tell, it's just kind of coming out organically, so there's no major structure to it. But yeah, and what's really funny is that my lived experience of that right now is that this podcast feels a bit fucking stuck. I was really looking forward to this episode that I was going to do with Jared, one of my friends from my study, because I was unofficially using it as momentum to get back into the podcast and get the podcast ball rolling again. And what I noticed this week when he had to postpone was just this flatness and this like shit. And it kind of felt a bit exposing because it was like, I don't have any other guests planned at the moment. Even that feels exposing to admit. And it just highlighted the fact that I just feel a bit stuck with this podcast. I love doing it. And there's a beautiful irony of putting together an audio program about helping people get unstuck while I'm feeling stuck. And I don't know, I can laugh at my own fuckery a little bit, but the reality is, and you probably experience it as well, like it's so much easier to support someone else and to see their stuff than it is to see my own, to see your own. And yeah, I think underneath that, it just shows that, you know, this is not a finished product right here. This is a work in progress, and even helping other people with a frame around getting unstuck. You know, it's still something that's a work in progress for me. So it makes me laugh, and it also just makes me fucking human. So I'm cool with that. So we're going to talk about some of the conditions, I guess, some of the scenarios that cause us to be stuck, where we get stuck, how we benefit from it, what are the consequences, and what are some of the emotional undercurrents that come from being stuck. And then I think at the end, we're like, what the hell are we going to do about it? And that kind of is going to lead into the audio series, which I haven't finished yet. So we're just still in that imperfect scenario, but that's okay too. So basically with this episode, if you feel a little bit stuck, like you've got lots of ideas, lots of plans, feelings, but you're struggling to really move with them, or if you want a bit more momentum, but you don't want that momentum at the cost of burning out or forcing it or faking it or shooting yourself into it. That's the general vibe that I'm going for today. Cool. I know, a lot of rambling. Like what are we? We're 7 minutes in. Interesting. All right, before we start, I want to do a check-in. And it feels a bit weird when I'm by myself, but the reality is that the purpose of putting these check-ins into the podcast is, while you're listening, is to actually be able for you to do a check-in on yourself as a reminder that you have the capacity to check in anytime you want. And it's that basic holistic check-in of physical, mental, emotional. So yeah, as I'm going through mine, maybe just take some time and go through yours as well. So for me, physically, my stomach feels a bit empty, and not like a hunger empty, just like a little, I don't know, anxiety empty, if that makes sense. Other than that, my body actually feels pretty good. Physically, I feel pretty light. There's no major pain points or tightness or anything like that. Just this sort of sensation of emptiness in my stomach and a bit of tightness in my chest. Mentally is our stories, our beliefs, our thoughts, things that happen in our head. Mentally, I've kind of got a I'm an idiot sometimes. I've kind of got a mixture of clarity on one side, like, and then the other side is, you know, I was going to say blurriness, but fogginess. So yeah, there's parts of me that are really clear about what I want to say today, and there's also a fogginess that I actually don't have a structure. I'm just kind of freestyling. So from a cognitive point of view on my thoughts, there's both those things are true at the moment. So we'll just see what happens there. And then emotionally, I feel okay. That's an underwhelming assessment. I feel okay. Yeah, there's a little bit of anxiety, like I mentioned before, around, you know, the being on a solo cast and just being the one voice. But I'm getting better at being a bit of an imperfect mess and fucking just doing it anyway. So I kind of part of me welcomes that anxiety. So yeah, that's my check-in. Um, yeah, I'd be I have to say I'm curious to hear yours, but that shit ain't gonna work. So um, yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, post your check-in in the comments. But yeah, I don't think that's gonna work. All right, so I kind of want to talk about this whole idea about being stuck, um, and to bring it back to the practical. I want to start with where in our life we get stuck, because I actually think there's there's no part of our life that's immune to this feeling. Um, and what I want to do as I go through these, I kind of want to explain what that feeling might feel like in each part. So let's let's just do it. I think the first part, and one that I'm seeing a lot of at the moment in my work, is people are getting stuck in their work or their purpose or their career, especially because I'm working with a lot of people that are kind of middle age, and they may have done a certain thing for a long time, and then they're like, what happens now? Is this what I'm doing for the rest of my life? So, that idea that people feeling like their job no longer fits, but they're unsure what to do next. Um, People that are starting projects but not finishing, drifting in their career but questioning what success means, feeling uninspired or undervalued, but staying in the job out of fear or comfort. That's a big one as we get older. Just that, even the financial security of staying in work. But yeah, I think the work and purpose can be it's a big picture stuckness. And yeah, so that's the first one. The second one, and these are not in any order of importance, but the second one, I think, is relationships. We can feel stuck in relationships, and that can look like feeling unseen or disconnected or resentful if you're in a long-term relationship. It can look like, patterns of conflict or avoidance that are repeating themselves. It can look like a fear of intimacy or vulnerability, even though that you like crave closeness. And it can look like an uncertainty about ending something or stepping into something new in regards to like a relationship. So yeah, relationships is a really interesting one. And there's a lot of emotional threads that connect with that one. So it's a tough one to even want to look at. But there's one thing that I'm noticing more, working with people, is that it's this connection that can come from conflict, and that sometimes that what we've perceived to be conflict often can be stepped into, and there's a stronger connection on the other side. So yeah, stuckness in relationships can actually provide a really amazing knock-on result. I think the other one, and this is probably one that I've really struggled with, is self-worth, or even like identity. Um, you know, that whole "I'm not enough" narrative, like being stuck in the murkiness of "I'm not enough" is fucking challenging. What comes from that is like the inner critic pops up, perfectionist pops up, because um, he or she has a role to play, and then there's like procrastination that pops up, and I think all those things link back to like they're low key ways to shame ourselves that we're not enough, that we need to do more, be more, all the rest of it. And I think that's a really interesting loop that causes us to be stuck. Um, Yes, I'm just thinking like some other things, like feeling like you're performing a version of yourself that's not quite real, like there's a mask on. And then there's, this under this same title of like self-worth, is like that gap that you feel between who you are and who you want to be. All of those different things can contribute to this stuckness based around self-worth and who the fuck am I? Sorry, I'm swearing a bit. Um, I think the next one is around like creativity and expression. And I'm laughing because I don't see myself as very creative or expressive. I never have, and it gets me a little bit uneasy. But I have been working, and there's a few guys in circle that are like this. Like feel like there's something inside of you that wants to out, but not really knowing how. And then the stuckness of like comparing your creative output to others and fearing judgment, failure, or even fearing success. And I think part of the stuckness with creativity is like feeling frozen between having an idea and putting it into action. And I think that's probably got some juice in it in regards to all the different parts of life where you potentially feel stuck. It's like that I kind of know what I want to do, but I don't seem to be able to do it. um, so yeah, we'll dig into that a little bit. We can be stuck in our health and in our habits and kind of looking after ourselves. What that looks like is the repeating self-sabotage behavior around movement, around food, around sleep, around all the stuff that we know is good for us that we successfully get in the fucking way of. Yeah, it's that thing around knowing what would help but not doing it. Knowing what I need right now, but I'm just not doing it. And yeah, that's a pretty prevalent conversation. I think the other thing that I've noticed recently about health is like sometimes there's some motivation kicks in and then it becomes like an all or nothing thing. Like I have to do this, and then there's either burnout or injury or collapse even, So it's like sometimes when we have evidence of that can reinforce our stuckness in our health. It's like, oh, fuck it, I tried to do that and look what happened, And I think the knock-on effect of this is we can start to feel a bit disconnected from our body. So yeah, stuckness with our health is a big one. It's kind of my wheelhouse a little bit from my past working in the fitness industry. But yeah, there's a lot in it. What else? I think life direction is probably the other one. And it's one that I kind of mentioned at the start about career and stuff, but it's bigger than that. It's questioning your life path, big decisions, what happens now, what's the next chapter. We can get a bit stuck in that, and that can bring up a concern around making the wrong choice. So we just don't make a fucking choice at all. And also it means that we can get lost in planning and overthinking and really just like never really beginning. It's that like, what's the word for it? It's like productive procrastination. So it looks like we're doing something to move forward, but we're actually not really doing anything to move forward. Yeah, I think just thinking about that now, it's like that feeling of that life's happening to you rather than being shaped by you. It's that fucking default life that we found ourselves in that we didn't create. I think that's what I'm talking around here, around life direction. It's like, what does it look like to get unstuck and create the life that we want? So if I had to summarize that, it's like work purpose, relationships, self-worth, creativity, health, and like big picture life direction. They're kind of the main parts of life that we get stuck. Yeah. So, and I mention those because we often don't get stuck in all areas at once. It might be that we're stuck here and then that will leak over to the other part of life and that'll leak over. And so it can have this snowball effect. But yeah, it's just interesting to think about those 6. What else? I think one's a really important part is like in my work, I really like to dig into what are the benefits of things. And sometimes the benefit is not always the thing that's most supportive, but it's what's necessary. And if we think about what are the benefits of being stuck, there's some obvious ones, but there's some less obvious ones. Like I think straight away the first one is like safety, because being stuck, not moving means that you avoid the risk, the failure, the exposure, the rejection, like all the things that come with putting yourself out there. Or maybe I'll rephrase that, come with the fears of putting yourself out there, because often none of those things actually eventuate. So I'll caveat that. So safety's big. It keeps us safe. It keeps us in place. Our little cage that we build for ourselves is a safe thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. The second one's familiarity. And then even if it's a bit gross and a bit uncomfortable, it's known, it's familiar. And I think we all have a version of clinging to the familiar, even though it may not be the let me rephrase that. Cling to the familiar, even though we know it's not the right thing for us in that moment. Yeah. One of the sneaky benefits, though, of being stuck is maybe you need time to integrate what's actually happening in your world. So maybe the stuckness is important to allow you to really, and the word integrates used to piss me off, but I actually quite like it now, around being able to embody and take on board and process and feel and have some awareness of, and maybe some acceptance of what's actually happening in your life, to marinate in it, because sometimes that integration is important before rushing to the next thing, the solution, the fix, the change, the next chapter, whatever it is. So maybe one of the benefits of being stuck is, giving yourself time to marinate in what the fuck is happening right now. And again, that can feel a bit gross, but it could also be really important. Protection is definitely a benefit. Staying stuck can protect us from our decisions that feel really overwhelming. So without needing to get unstuck, we don't need to step into the decisions that can feel overwhelming. So protection. It's another kind of way to say safety, but I think it's a little bit different. Another one is identity preservation. Identity. What the fuck does that mean? Identity preservation. It means that you get to preserve the dynamic that you've created, the identity, in the situation, the stuck situation that you're in. Okay. And then if you stay there, you don't have to outgrow this dynamic, these roles that you're known for. So the people around you know you for this thing. And then if you change and do something different in your life, it upsets the dynamic. It upsets the identity, it upsets the apple cart of how other people may see you and see value for you. So that one's got a fair bit of power in it. I know if we come back to relationship, like change in relationship can often be stunted by the dynamic between the two people, and that, you've created this dynamic and you had a role in it, and if you're changing it, there's some responsibility there. Yeah, it's a bit of a funky one. And I also think, just to wrap up the benefit part, is like the last benefit for being stuck is like it can be a signal for unmet needs. So similar to the integration thing, it's an opportunity to pause and to feel and to regroup. And maybe that's what's necessary right now, rather than rushing to the next thing. And I think that can kind of loop back to that that productive procrastination. Like, I need to be doing in order to feel better. I need to get some runs on the board. I need to tick off the to-do list. I need to move forward. But sometimes we just need to fucking sit, me included, and feel what's going on. And I think that can be a really big benefit of being stuck. And I think the important part there is the discernment to know when to step out of that, when to step out of okay, I've been marinating in this shit for long enough and it's time to do something about it. So, yeah. And I think, as a reflection question, it's like, how do you benefit from being stuck? And if you think about those different areas that I mentioned before, like, what are some of the benefits of being stuck in those different areas? Is it your system's way of protecting you? Or is it asking for something, for rest, for clarity, for support? There can be a kindness to this stuckness. And I think that's what I want to bring up with the benefit part is like, it's not all shamey and guilt-ridden. It can actually be really supportive. Your stuckness can be supportive in order for you to find clarity of what's next. But I think if we don't have the awareness around that, then that turns into an issue. Okay? And the issue being that if the inner critic pops up and we have some shame around being stuck and I can't move forward and all the rest of it, we're then piling that shame onto this situation that's already there. And that just makes things a little bit harder. So, because you're dealing with more than just the practical, the literal experience. And then, if we move to the consequences, and this is a frame that I use with people all the time, it's like, what's the benefit? What's the consequence? It's not new work. But if we think about the consequences of being stuck, and I think most of us have a lived experience of most of these. So just listen to some of these and see what you think. Like, I've actually written these ones down. It's internal frustration with self or others, a loss of confidence and momentum with doubt creeping in, a disconnection from creativity, joy, or meaning. Ugh, ouch, that one hurts. A disconnection from joy. That's harsh. Paralysis in decision making, like everything just feels a bit heavier and a bit fucking unsure. It can cause a strain on relationships, especially if there's other people that are impacted by your stuckness. The desire for other people, for you to keep moving, for you to get out of your slump, that can really impact things. There's that consequence of like missed opportunities, and yes, there's like the external opportunities. I didn't go for that job, or I, didn't do that thing in the business. But there's also opportunities of like how you feel about yourself internally, because moving forward and getting unstuck, there's some connection there to worthiness. I'm worth it, so it's an interesting one. And then I think the other consequence, the final consequence, is like the internal conflict grows louder the longer you avoid movement. See, I told you so. You're still doing that thing. You're still stuck. You're a piece of shit. Whatever the inner critic pops up with, it gets heightened the longer you stay there. So, and I think that's the thing. It's like the challenge of staying there too long. And we talk about the benefits of being stuck and feeling what's going on, but there's also a real challenge of staying there too long. There's some like real world examples of staying there too long and having some pretty shitty consequences. How you feel about yourself, how others feel about you. The whole idea of moving forward and feeling successful and validated and valuable and, following your purpose and all that stuff, the longer we delay that, the harder it gets. And it's challenging. So, I'm actually just going to stop and slow down, because even talking about this is like making me feel a little heavy. And I guess this is the humaning side of the podcast. Like, I'm talking about this in the third person, like as in it's, what's happening in your world even, but I have an experience of most of these things, and even just talking about it makes me like touch on some of those feelings that are associated with that. And it's a tough one. It's not pleasant, because the story in there for me is like, you should be able to sort this out. You should have this shit sorted. You should have, be here by now. And under that is the should. I'm shoulding myself. And I'm sure, in some capacity, you've shoulded yourself in the past as well. And I think if we look at what's under the should, is there's some shame that you're not where you want to be. There's some shame that you're not who you want to be. And with that comes different stories. So if we think about like what are some of the emotions that come with being stuck? Like, I think shame is the headliner, unfortunately. And it's super interesting because shame has a really big role in our behavior, whether it's conscious or unconscious. A lot of our life is shaped around avoiding the feeling of shame. It's I'm going to pause on that. That's a fucking big subject. And I'm going to do more stuff on that, but yeah, let me just wind that one back in. So coming back to like the emotions of being stuck, shame is the headliner. Underneath it, not too far behind, is fear. That fear of being seen, the fear of failing, the fear of doing the wrong thing, the fear of being imperfect, like all those fears that are real, the fear of change. That's real. There's some kind of ambivalence in there around like, I'm kind of comfortable where I am, but I also want to grow. That stuckness of, my life is actually okay. There's nothing majorly bad going on, and I want it to be different. So there's this like, there's a little bit of conflict or ambivalence in that around, that would be great, but am I willing to go through what it takes to get to that other side? So there's that. I think there's some loneliness in it, in being stuck. That whole idea of the world just seems to be moving on without me, and I'm stuck in place. Yeah, and I think when I think about that, there's a loneliness there. The guilt of not doing enough, but especially if others are watching and or waiting. This one makes me laugh. I think this podcast has been driven by guilt, because last week in my email newsletter to my crew, I put a little list of the things that are coming up, and one of them was podcast and all the rest of it. And when I realized that, I wasn't going to put one out this week, when I thought about it today, there was like, what hit me was guilt. You said you would, you have to do it, all these things. So it's powerful, guilt for not doing enough. Interesting. Resentment is an obvious emotion that pops up from being stuck, and that's, we think about that in relationship, but it's also just resentment towards our obligations that feel like pressure. Resentment towards the life that we've created, maybe the default life that has unfolded for us. It's a fucking hard one. And I think in there, if we look a little bit on some of the positive emotions that are in there, is like, there's hope. There's fucking yes. I do want that. I can do that. And it's like this little flame that's just still flickering in there. There's some hope. And I think that's what drives a lot of us, because the bigger thing that can come from being stuck is this overwhelming sense of helplessness, of like, fuck, I don't know how to get out of this. And that is a shitty place to be. And I've felt it. And yeah, it's a really tough one. And I think, the other side of helplessness is the realization that you have a choice for it to be different. And I think that's the really powerful thing. I think I mentioned it in a podcast I did with Katya Ellis. She was talking about her Gestalt practice, and her main thing was not about reducing suffering. It was supporting people to help them realize that they have a choice. And I think that's super important. And I actually think it's the whole core of this unstuck process, this change process, is like realizing that you have the capabilities to make a different choice. And with that comes the reduction of the helplessness, because you've got evidence that you can do something about it. And I think I'm getting into parts of what the audio program is around, but I think with stuckness, there's, if we're looking at what the fuck do I do now, like how do I get out of this, the frame that I use with people, and it's not mine, I'm not going to claim it, but I do love this frame to use as a guide, as a loose guide. And it starts with awareness. And this is not new for people that have been on here a while, but this whole conversation today has been around the awareness of stuckness. What does it look like? Where is it in my life? How do I benefit from it? What are the consequences? What does it feel like? What are the emotions that attach to it? This is literally the awareness building process. And I think without awareness, we can't move forward, because if we can't see it, we can't fucking change it. And that's a really simple sentence to say and a really hard thing to do in practice. So I think the first step of this process of becoming unstuck is to play with these stuff that we're talking about today around balance. I mean, introducing awareness, and that comes with a little bit of courage. There's got to be some courage to actually look at what's going on. I had a couple of new guys come to Circle on Monday night, and they came on a night where we were doing some I laugh, but we're doing some big work on shame, and we did an exercise called Ruin Your Reputation, and it was to talk with a partner around a behavior where you feel shame, or something that's happened in your past where you feel shame. And I tried to encourage them to pick something small, but they both leant in and did a really good job. But the feedback I got the following day was, it was painful to look at that part of me, and I feel so much lighter because of it. Now, doing that takes courage, and often the courage is hard to do by yourself. And the looking is the awareness part. So we didn't do anything on Monday night other than let these men tell a story about themselves, and really just shine a light of awareness of these different parts of us that carry shame. But they all have the courage to do it, and they all have the courage to share it. And that's where I think this, courage and awareness come hand in hand. And, sometimes it's okay not to have the courage. Just be like, yep, I'm not fucking looking at that right now. And that's got a place too. But I think the first step to moving forward is to actually heightening the awareness a little bit. Cool. All right. And I actually think that's the easy bit, because it's you know your bits of fuckery and the bits of self-sabotage and how you get in your way. Like, the awareness part is actually quite simple. The next part, acceptance, is not so fucking simple. How do I not want to banish this part of me that I don't like? And I think it's a really interesting and important step in the process. And I'm conscious to go too deep into this, but I'll touch on it and then we'll talk more about it in the audio program. But acceptance is not surrender, throw your hands in the air, be like, well, this is me. That's not it. Acceptance is having a willingness to accept the reality of the situation. Like, we can have awareness, right? Cool. I can see that that's what's happening. The acceptance is, I have a willingness to accept that this is my reality right now. And what that means is that you are not pushing the reality away and hoping that it's something else. And I think there's a real tenet, a core tenet in there around the change process of kind of change begins when we start to accept who we are rather than striving to be someone else. I think that's at the core of this whole process of being unstuck. And I think acceptance can come on a spectrum. Like, you can start accepting like little things, like the fact that I'm a bit unprofessional and a bit shit and I swear a bit too much. And I can accept those parts and not shame myself about it. And then we can move to bigger things. So acceptance is a muscle that can be built. And I think the thing that I want to share here is that it's not hands in the air, surrender. Well, this is me. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. And I think when we go back and look at parts of ourselves that we struggle with, that have shame and that sort of thing, we ask those same questions, like, how did I benefit from that? And what are the consequences of that? And with that, we get a bit of a more awareness around the light and the shadow part of that situation. And seeing both sides, the light and the shadow, we can then start to feel a bit of compassion, a little bit of understanding, maybe a bit of forgiveness. And with all those things comes some acceptance. Super important. Cool. Third step, not in order, but kinda, is support. And what support represents to us. And I think there's two main parts to this. Is how do we self-support? Like, how do we support ourselves? And then how do we ask for, search for, follow up with getting external support, getting support by others? I think the self-support is, a lot of it is around getting to know the parts of you that you've previously pushed away. It's a big sentence. And I think, that could be a lifetime work, but it could also just be starting that process. And self-support could be when some of these shitty behaviors pop up, when the self-sabotage, the repeating patterns, this stuff pops up. Self-support could be, what do I need to do to support myself in this moment instead of letting my inner critic run the fucking show? And it might be a practical thing, or it might be an internal conversation, but it's just building that muscle of self-support. Like, what do I need in this moment? And I fucking love that shit, because there's a big dose of self-responsibility, and I think that's really important. So yeah, the first half is self-support. The other part is external support, and I find this to be super interesting because it comes back to the core of stuckness of like this story that can be there around, I should be able to sort this out. And if I can't sort this out, I look like a fucking idiot. Sorry, I'm swearing way too much. I look like I haven't got my shit together. And then asking for help is admitting that I haven't got my shit together. So most of us have some sort of story about what it looks like to ask for help, what it looks like to ask for support. And there's some really interesting work that can be done with that to loosen the grip of those stories and be able to have acceptance of your situation and step into or lean into being open to more external support. And that support could be, coming to therapy. It could be asking for help from your family. It could be, talking to your partner and asking for them to chip in. Whatever it is, it's like, how do I support myself? And then how do I step into giving voice to getting external support? And then I think when we have these three things, our awareness is building, our acceptance is building, and we've done some work around how we self-support and how we ask for support. Those three things build a fucking strong foundation. And then that foundation means that you are well more equipped. That doesn't make sense. That foundation means that you are more equipped to confront the choice for change. And this is a concept of, metaphorically, if you're standing at a crossroad and normally your default is to go left and to do the repeating pattern, the choice for change is to have the ability to choose something different, to choose a different direction away from your normal default patterning. And this choice for change concept is kind of cool because it can be like, you can play with it in like little 2 out of 10 things like food shopping and different patterns that we get into to flex that. What does it look like to do it differently? And then if we think about unstuck or the stuck process, realizing you have choice is the key to feeling unstuck. Shit, I've just given it away. But it's true. And sometimes realizing that choice and stepping into it in a different direction can be done with more vigor or with more substance when you've built that foundation of awareness, acceptance, and support. Does that make sense? And then when we get to those crossroads, we are well more equipped. We are more equipped to not fall into the default and to choose a different path. And that's what I'm talking about with Unstuck. It's this frame of these four things: awareness, acceptance, support, and choice for change. And how we get to play with those things. Yeah, it's funny. Like we're 48 minutes in. This has been an evolving concept over a few years, and it's been consolidated with a lot of my Gestalt study and being able to work with people one-on-one and also in Circle and in our Melbourne group. But this frame can be used over and over again with different situations, with little 2 out of 10 scenarios, with 10 out of 10 scenarios. Like, this frame is solid. So yeah, I encourage you to explore, the awareness, acceptance, support scenario that can help you make more choice for change and get unstuck, which is the other part of that. What does that look like on a practical basis? Well, I'll have more details in the audio series that I'm going to put out. It's going to be kind of probably 10-minute audios with some reflection questions and some homework. It'll be like 6 emails over 6 days, that sort of vibe. I'm not going to charge anything for it. Part of the reason I want to do it is these ideas are in my head and in my practice, and I want to put them out into the world. And the other part is that my one-on-one group stuff is pretty full, and I still have some people that want support, and this is a way that they can be supported to make a better choice for change. But yeah, on a real practical level, I only have a certain amount of time to support people, and I fucking love doing it. So this just gives me a little tool to be able to go and do this and see how you go. So yeah, like I have grand intentions of doing bigger stuff, but I don't know. Don't know if I will. Don't know if I want to. I guess we'll see. I get to make some choices for change if I can put those other three in place. Yeah, so that's my unstructured, structured, what's alive right now discussion on being stuck. And I think it's super fucking important as humans that we get to know each other, We get to know ourselves and our patterns and what holds us back. So we have some agency in being able to work with that. And I think this frame does a really good job of that. So I hope some of this has been helpful. I hope that maybe in some capacity you've heard some of your story and some of the stuff I've been talking about. I definitely have my version of stuckness. It happens way too often for me, and I'm very familiar with the feelings of it. So I think that's probably why I'm super fucking excited to get this some of this work out into the world, because it feels so real for me. So yeah, thank you for listening. Yeah, if you've any questions, any feedback, anything, just stick a comment into Spotify. I'm attempting to not do too much social media, so I'll put a clip of this up, but that's about it. I don't really use that as a platform to communicate with people. Jump on my website, rickwatson.com.au, and reach out, and let's have a human conversation rather than an online one. All right, that's me. Thank you for listening, and have an awesome day. Hey, before you head off, I just wanted to mention, which I forgot to mention in the actual podcast, that if you are interested in doing the Unstuck audio series, there is a link in the show notes to a webpage on my website. The program is not done as of recording this podcast, but it is very close. So if listening to the podcast today has some interest in moving forward and doing more work in this getting unstuck scenario, jump onto the link in my show notes. The actual address is rickwatson.com.au/get unstuck, all one word. But there's a link for that in the show notes. And then once it is live, which will be in the next week, most probably, I will flick you an email directly and you can go from there. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.